All right, you got it.
Yep, I got it. Okay. Yeah, so all right, we've got 36 members of the public on. One of our staff members is having some technical issues, so bear with us for a moment. We will put out some survey questions. These are questions, we're just trying to keep track of who we have coming to these meetings. So the first few questions you'll see were on at the last meeting if you attended that. And then we have some questions later on in the meeting that will be unique and new. So for now, I'll just post up these questions. If you could please take those. Oh, there you are, Mallory. Hi. Yep. Okay, so, all right, we had about 80 people register for the event, and right now 40 are on. So we'll give it another moment. And thanks for taking the poll. Looks like about 3/4 of you have filled out the results or the poll so far.
We also have the Q&A open for folks that have additional questions. We'll be trying to answer them as quickly as possible throughout the night. So please use that function if you have personal questions.
Okay, Liz, I just want to test if you can hear me and see me, because I think I'm talking through one device and videoing through another.
We hear you and we see you.
Because that's 2021 in a nutshell, right?
We got you.
Okay, well, I apologize if I have a little bit of a side view here, everybody, but it's better than no face, I'm sure. Maybe, I don't
know. Okay, so I think we'll just keep running the poll, but maybe we can get started.
Okay. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is meeting 2 of our 3-meeting series on the Jersey Avenue Light Rail Redevelopment Plan and the upcoming amendments that we've been working on for a few months. So I'm assuming many of you attended with us at the last meeting. We had that about 3 weeks ago and had great attendance and participation. So we look forward to continuing the process and giving you a little bit more information here tonight. So just a quick outline of what we're going to be going through in this meeting. We're going to start with a recap of very high level what we discussed in the last meeting and what we heard from you in terms of feedback. We're also going to talk about bonus properties. So we talked about the concept of writing bonuses into the plan, which allow specific properties different development rights if they meet a suite of community benefits. We're going to talk about bulk visualization, which is just as we're looking at making changes to the regulations of the plan, what does that mean and what does that look like when things get built out over time? And we're going to talk about community benefits a little bit further. So we have looked at a couple of influences and a couple of analytical tools in city planning. And we're going to get into some conversations about different community benefits and how they might play out in the plan. And then more specifically, we're going to look at the 16th Street Park and get some feedback from you all on programming and what kind of amenities you'd like to see in the neighborhood in general. And we'll end on general discussion. So we have a lot of content tonight. So we have Matt Ward here running the Q&A function. So if you have questions along the way or general questions about slides, feel free to ask those. And we can answer those via chat. We can talk about them at the end of the presentation. And we can also follow up with you in the next week or so. We're having an open comment period on the presentation for the next week. So I don't know if I properly introduced myself. I'm Mallory Clark-Sokolov. I'm a senior planner here at City Planning. Matt Ward is our supervising planner and an expert of all things Jersey City planning oriented, so he'll help a lot with Q&A. And Liz Oper is our urban designer, so she works a lot on visualizing and understanding kind of the more physical side of how a lot of our policy decisions play out. And of course, we have Tanya Marione online as well, who's the director of city planning. So thanks for joining again, and we can jump into the content. So looking at round one recap, so what we discussed last time we met with you all, just want to preface all of this with the materials and the recorded presentation from the first meeting are available on the city's data portal. So you're able to view those and watch that if you missed out on that meeting. But we talked about just kind of introduction to future development, specifically the Holland Garden site and the Lincoln Equity site, and looking at general bulk parameters that we've studied a little further since the last time we met. We also talked about affordable housing and the introduction of the city's IZO policy, which went into place January 1st of this year, and how that's going to impact development due to the affordable housing requirements set in place. We talked about parks and open space. More specifically, we'll go into detail on 16th Street later tonight. Transit infrastructure, so the idea of leveraging private development to bring a light rail station to the neighborhood, which we feel is a much needed necessity. I wouldn't even consider that an amenity really at this point for the neighborhood. And then public facilities, so the opportunity for the concept of community benefits to include other facilities outside of just parks and the light rail. So just a high level of what we heard from you last time. So we had about 116 attendees log on January 27th, 61 participated in our poll questions throughout. So you just got a little bit of practice with that at the beginning here. And we had about 34 questions submitted via the Q&A function. So the answers to all those questions will be provided on the data portal. We'll have those uploaded. We're targeting the end of this week. So going into the weekend, you should have information from tonight's presentation and answers to last meeting's questions. So hold on, I just want to go over because I have an important charge for you all. How'd you hear about the meeting? Most of you answered that you heard about it through a friend or neighbor, and that's just important to highlight here because that means you all are responsible for helping us spread the word and likely to be more successful. So we ask you to keep sharing news of these meetings with your neighbors and your friends and others who you think might be interested, and also let them know that previous meetings are available to view on the data portal. And then why were you interested? Most of you responded that you either live directly in this neighborhood that Jersey Ave light rail affects or an adjacent neighborhood. And then we asked a little bit more opinion-based questions. So we got into what are your greatest concerns as this neighborhood grows? And we asked you to rank to choose two options that you were most concerned with. So what we heard from you is that overall affordability in the neighborhood was your largest concern overall, followed closely by traffic. And then next we asked you, in terms of community benefits, what are your top priorities for community benefits to bring to this neighborhood? And the highest response was for affordable housing, followed closely by the light rail. What's great about looking at these two in tandem is that the things you said you were concerned about were also the things you said you prioritized. So the fact that we have a very solid correlation between those things is great. That doesn't always happen. So it seems like everybody understands what they want for the neighborhood's future, and it makes it a lot clearer for us at planning to kind of write those priorities into the plan. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the specific property guidelines that we touched on last time, but we'll talk a little more specifically about how we've developed that language since we last met with you. So the Holland Garden site is our first site we're going to talk about. So I think many of you have also participated in some of the meetings for this site that the Jersey City Housing Authority has run. So you might be familiar with the proposals and the scenarios that they explored. Now, I would like to make very clear that what we're writing in terms of zoning is not a project, meaning this isn't a proposal. This is really just setting kind of minimums and maximums for what could happen within a proposal. So this isn't a definitive outline of what will be built or how the property would be redeveloped. It's just what's going to be feasible or possible to happen. So the major thing to consider in how this site is going to change over time is that the zoning will require the extension of 15th Street. So you can see on the screen, there's the kind of that orange hatch and orange arrow, and that portion of 15th Street does not exist on the current property. So they will be vacating 60 foot of right-of-way to connect the block from Erie to Jersey Ave. And that is a requirement of the zoning. And then what that does is actually divides the site into two parcels, which we're calling the north parcel and the south parcel. The north parcel through subdivision is required to be a minimum of 70,000 square feet, and the south parcel is required to be a minimum of 30,000 square feet. And then looking a little bit more in detail about what can happen on those parcels. So there's a couple kind of key urban design parameters that we've put in place that will guide how the building will look. So again, we've really stepped away in city planning as a general practice from writing very specific bulk requirements, and we really just try to set kind of highs and lows and let the development proposal come in of what the best iteration of a building can be within those parameters. So the major considerations for you all as the community to be aware of is that we kind of treat this parcel by frontage on the street. So if you look at 16th Street to the north, you have Erie Street to the east and Jersey Ave to the west, and those are the main frontages, as well as 15th Street, the new extension of that to the south. And the main restrictions that are in place in the zoning as we have it right now are that along Jersey Ave, a tower portion of this massing is permitted to be a maximum of 250 feet high and 23 stories. So I think a lot of you are kind of familiar with this general idea of a 23-story maximum, as we discussed last meeting and as was discussed in the Housing Authority meetings. But that will be restricted to a specific portion along Jersey Avenue. Similarly, we're going to have a slightly more stringent version of that along Erie Street frontage as we step to more interior of the redevelopment area, where the existing building stock is a little bit lower rise, and the future building stock won't be quite as high as what we see over by cast iron lofts and Soho lofts and such. So here we're restricting the maximum height to 200 feet, and that can be that can encompass 18 stories. Any tower portion or raised portion along the 16th Street frontage is allowed to have a maximum of 60% of that frontage. So 60% of the width of that portion of the building can come to a maximum of 150 feet in height, and that's to respond to the existing Lackawanna building across the street. So we don't want any architectural element there that's going to dwarf or contradict the architectural integrity of the Lackawanna building. And then similarly, on the south boundary along 15th Street, you can have a tower span of a maximum of 40% of that frontage. So this pushes the highest point of that massing along Jersey Avenue to match a lot of the properties and the development in Jersey Ave Park redevelopment plan, and then starts to step down as we step interior to the Jersey Ave light rail plan. And then south parcel, we have a maximum height of 8 stories permitted. Really all we're really limiting at this point is that we're setting back to ensure that we have the necessary sidewalk width that we would like to set, which is a minimum of 12 foot from the edge of the curb to where the building starts. This portion in the current scenario that Jersey Housing Authority has pursued is envisioned right now as for sale affordable condominium. So that'll be a unique home ownership opportunity at the affordable level, which is not as common of an affordable housing prototype as we see here in the city. So this will be a lower rise element up to 8 stories, and it's still determined if it plays out to actually be the for sale, but that is the scenario that they're currently exploring. And then kind of what does this mean in terms of function? So we've gone over the form and what that might look like or how tall things might be, but there's a lot of other sides of this property that I know the community is very concerned about. And so there are things we're writing in the plan. You know, some of these things are handled and monitored and operated and enforced by the Jersey City Housing Authority, but there's the ability to address some of these things in the zoning itself, and that's where we step in. So there will be, per the development of this property and the bonus to develop this property in this way, there will be a minimum of 1-to-1 replacement of existing public housing or income restricted units on the northern parcel, comprising no less than 20% of total units in the total development. So the northern and southern parcel combined, the 1-to-1 replacement must be at least 20% of that total. And what that really does is kind of aligns, although this property is of course in its current state 100% affordable housing, there will be market rate introduced on top of the existing affordable housing units in the future, and this really makes sure that future development also aligns to the IZO with the 20% requirement. This also allows, we're going to permit for the adjustment of income restricted unit mix, meaning if there's 5 4-bedrooms and 3 2-bedrooms and 1 3-bedroom, the new version of this property doesn't have to identically create that mix, but what it does is have to match the total bedrooms. And that is because a lot of what we have heard in working closely with the housing authority is that there might be a lot of current units where you might have a 4-bedroom unit, and actually the family that's placed in that unit really only needs 3 bedrooms. And so this offers the opportunity to kind of right size units for the existing tenants. And then where there might be a surplus, we can now create additional 1-bedroom affordable units and kind of expand the opportunity of the affordable housing to new tenants. And we're also going to allow for the incorporation of a co-located library or public use facility at this property. So in addition to just traditional library functions, we would envision this being a space that included community rooms, offices, and other ancillary spaces for residents of the property, but also general public. So that's a much needed space, we believe, and we would be working in tandem and coordinating with the upcoming or pending public use facility that was recently approved and is under construction in the Jersey Ave Park redevelopment plan. So we'll make sure that the programming makes sense and that's not very redundant for a nearby space and bring something new to the table. And then, as discussed earlier, we're also going to allow for the for sale affordable condominiums in the southern parcel. We are introducing parking requirements into this portion of the plan. So there's very limited parking currently within this site, and a lot of it is still street parking on an alleyway. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor. I think, Liz, if you could just use your cursor to show that, right, that alleyway that exists between the gas stations that are fronting along 14th Street and the housing property. So there's very limited parking, and it's mostly on-street parking outside of that. So we will be introducing a minimum of 0.2 spaces per bedroom on residential uses. So I just want to clarify that that's per bedroom and not per unit. And then a maximum of 1 space per 500 square feet for all other uses. So for amenities such as the library, it's a maximum of 1 space for 500 square feet. And the zoning currently allows for the parking of the southern parcel to be accommodated in the northern parcel. So, you know, it might not be that there's a parking structure in both components or both parcels of the project and build out. Moving on to the other site that we discussed last time, where we've kind of developed the light rail bonus a little bit further and what that means from a form standpoint as well. So we have a series of setbacks on this site. So the building is required to set back on all frontages. So if you look at the diagram on the top, it's required a 20-foot setback from the light rail tracks. That's just to ensure access to the light rail, but also just safety from a structural standpoint from the light rail tracks, which are elevated and come down to grade along this frontage. We have a 25-foot setback along Jersey Ave, which is on the left of the diagram here. Sorry, we don't have street names on that top one. So that sets back and allows again for access to hopefully a future light rail station from the Jersey Ave sidewalk. And then we have a 5-foot setback from lots 8 and 10, which are the gas station that exists on that block, and then that grass area. It's 2 lots there, and so there's a 5-foot setback required. And so basically what that leaves you is that orange hatch is your developable footprint from a zoning standpoint. That doesn't mean from a structural standpoint it's feasible to develop on all that, but just as a first step from zoning, that's where you would start to kind of back into a building. And on the bottom, we've copied over the developers' crude massing of what their initial proposal is that was submitted to our office. And so you can see on the top that they have accommodated the light rail station and that 20-foot setback. That's kind of that whiter band in that area. And then they've also provided pedestrian access from all streets. So we have it from Jersey Ave, from Grove Street to the west, or sorry, Grove Street to the east, and from 18th Street to the south. And that's via a public plaza. So basically the way the zoning is written, we've kind of backed into a series of towers and higher structures that would come off of the base bulk. So in this diagram here, this green area is really consider that the base bulk. So that would be a lot of smaller podium, which would contain things like parking or ground floor retail spaces. And then you have your residential towers, which are the white rectangles pulling off of the base of the structure. And the way that we have set a couple of limitations in place are a max height of 18 stories and 230 feet, a minimum of a 15,000 square foot station plaza. So that plaza connecting in the center there is a minimum size. And then we have a couple of tower bulk offsets that are required. So you can see in the pink arrows, we're requiring that any 2 towers are set a minimum of 90 feet from one another. This is really to ensure a comfortable threshold from tower to tower. You've probably seen in many buildings throughout the city that some of the towers can get quite close together. And we wanted to ensure that we kind of allow for maximum light and air and allow for a comfortable offset, both from property to property, but also within the property as well, because this is a unique footprint that we're dealing with here. We've also set some limitations because the property is rather linear in how long a single frontage is allowed to be. So you can see the blue arrow. We're permitting a maximum of a 220-foot long run before the building has to set back even further. So you can see that tower that sits above where the blue arrow is then set back an additional 30 feet. So that's just kind of a little bit of push and pull to create, again, more light and air, and also just visual architectural interest on the property. And so we don't want, somebody maxing out that 18 stories and 230 feet, just taking what they can develop and extruding as much of that up as possible. That's not the goal, nor is that how we consider good urban form in city planning. And so we're trying to back into what these towers might look like just through what comfortable offsets are. And then what this will really do is set density by envelope. We discussed that in the last meeting, but what that means is we don't really restrict units. We allow for units to occur based on what the building can actually accommodate comfortably within the setbacks and stepbacks that we're requiring. And just kind of an initial thing to relay to you all is as part of this bonus, the way we've written this in the draft is that there's going to be a 10% affordable on-site housing requirement. So whereas the IZO requires 20% for this property in addition to building out the light rail station and the access to the light rail station and the public plaza, they will be required to meet a 10% affordable housing requirement on site, so within the property. And we have had a fiscal analysis done by the city's consultant who handles these types of analyses for us, and they have confirmed that that is feasible at the 10%. So that's where we're at right now, and that's how we're developing the language today. I think that basically sums up where we're at with the language. Just to clarify, we will be sharing the draft language, so the actual redevelopment plan that we're looking to move forward, and we're studying a little further. We will be sharing that document on the data portal as well, so you'll be able to see all these details. We just wanted to go over kind of the high level and give you a little bit of a visual sense of what that language means.
Yeah, so that's language specific in the redevelopment plan to some of these site specific bonuses. And now we'll kind of get into just this general bonus language. But first, I just want to quickly end the poll. Thank you for participating. And I can just quickly show you all the results. Is that visible?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so, oh, okay, other. Okay, we got more others for how did you hear about this meeting? Okay, so I am curious as to how you're hearing about it. Maybe that's a good place for, I mean, I know it's not really a question, but maybe if you could throw in the Q&A where else you were getting that information, that might be helpful. I don't want to spend too much time on it in terms of conversation, just because, you know, we want to hear some other information from you. And then I think it's kind of a similar breakdown to last time in terms of where people, why people were interested in this area. So we've got about 17% of you who live in this area, and then 21% who live in an adjacent area.
Liz, I just want to interrupt you real quick, just so all the viewers know, you are able to scroll and see the different question results. It kind of looks like it might be part of the presentation and you don't have control over it, but if you want to review the answers, you can scroll down in that little poll window that pops up.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I have no idea what it looks like on the other end, so thanks. Okay, and then for zip codes, yeah, similarly, 25% of you are 07310 and 27% are 07302. Next closest is 07030 at 15%. Oh, actually, other is at 17, but I'm assuming that's a hodgepodge of zip codes. All right, so I will stop sharing. So thank you for participating, and we'll have more poll questions for you in a bit. Okay, so for bulk visualizations, we wanted to just show you all. This is the as of right permitted bulk, and the plan as it exists has 3 different districts within it. So there's a high-rise district, neighborhood district, and commercial strip. The commercial strip is along 14th Street. The neighborhood district is outlined in blue here. It has the Holland Garden site. And then the high-rise district back further towards the north. So the high-rise district is mixed use in nature. It's currently permitted a maximum height of 110 feet. If they're for residential uses, if industrial, it's permitted 65. And then the permitted density is 90 dwelling units per acre, and that's before a bonus that's already existing in the plan. And I'll get into that a little bit in the next slide. The neighborhood district in the middle of the plan, if you will, allows for residential, office, restaurant uses. Maximum residential height is 75 feet, followed closely by office and restaurant at 70. And the permitted density there is 50 dwelling units per acre. The commercial strip, auto, commercial uses, light industrial, we see a lot of, there's gas stations there, there's a hotel there. And the height by use is maximum of 50 feet. So from there, one thing that we talked about at the last meeting was about adjusting the open space bonus that currently is written into the plan. So currently we're looking to modify the contribution amount of the existing bonus. So there's currently an existing bonus within the plan that would be able to accommodate or would give an additional 30 dwelling units per acre. So taking it from 50 to 80 dwelling units per acre, or what was it, 90 to 120. So this additional density would fit into the permitted bulk. So there would be no reason for additional height as a result of this bonus. But yeah, basically we're looking to pick up and modify the contribution amount, which was currently set at $5,500 per unit, which at the last meeting we expressed as a very low number. And then we're looking now to match that contribution to the IZO payment in lieu contribution. So for this area, that's $75,000. So what used to be a contribution is of $5,500. We are proposing a $75,000 contribution. Okay. All right. And then within this rewrite effort, we're incorporating an affordable housing bonus. The affordable housing bonus would not apply to the commercial strip district, as we'd keep those uses as they are. We feel that they make sense in their geography, and their proximity to 14th Street. So yeah, we're looking to, this bonus would apply basically everywhere else in the plan area where there's not an existing, where there's not Holland Gardens, which has this, particular language that we talked about, and the light rail site that has particular language and zoning that we talked about. So pretty much everywhere else in the plan area, this could be utilized. And this image is kind of the scenario as if everybody was to take advantage of this bonus, which they most likely would not, but they are able to, but not necessarily every property owner would decide to do that. So the bonus would require 20% affordable on site. The density is not regulated by dwelling units per acre or FAR. So similarly, it's to, as we described for the light rail site, it's regulated by a building envelope. So we've set area, yard, and bulk regulations. And what was regulated, so these zones allowed for either 110 feet of development or, 110 or 75 feet of residential development. Sorry for flipping back, but it just gives you some context of that we're now permitting lots. We're permitting buildings to go up to 12 or 14 stories. And just as like a quick ballpark mental math for your background, oftentimes a story is about 10 feet. So we've allowed for some flexibility to have a couple of taller floors on the ground floor and second floor or within the podium, but we're looking to have permitted height based on the lot area. So what that means is that smaller lots would be only permitted to go to a certain height, and larger lots would be allowed to go to a different height. So what we're proposing is this threshold of 4,000 to 14,999 square feet of going up to 12 stories or 140 feet. And then larger sites could go 14 stories or 160 feet. And then from there, we're working to develop some bulk regulations. So that would be a combination, or looking at coverage and tower, coverage of a base and tower. So how much of the site could be covered by a podium, how much of the site could be covered with a footprint of a tower. We're also looking at yards and rear yards. So like a side yard, we're considering not requiring side yards. So what that could mean is that there are blank facades that could be built to the property line. And you see some of that typology nearby in this area, as well as other areas in the city. And then we're considering a 10% gross ground floor requirement to be commercial use. So anybody who's looking to take advantage of this bonus would need to do that. And then for parking, we're not going to set a parking minimum. Instead, we're looking to set a parking maximum of 0.5 spaces per bedroom. And then these I'm just going to flip through really quickly, but it's just to kind of give you a quick look at all of these things put together. So this is the as of right bulk. This is with some of the proposals that we have coming in. So it's the as of right bulk with the Holland Gardens and the light rail site. And then this is with the adjusted bulk of the affordable housing bonus. Okay, so on to the next section. So community benefits. So yeah, I won't go over this again, but we heard from you last time that affordability, traffic, and the light rail station are important to you. So from there, the city has been utilizing, we've been working to develop this tool called the Triple Bottom Line tool. And what it does is it assesses projects and kind of gives them a score of what's acceptable. And yeah, it's basically a way to see if we think that a project makes sense, or that this tool thinks a project makes sense to pursue. Is it good for the community? So yeah, your feedback on your priorities and concerns are an input into the internal evaluation process. We can utilize, there's certain weighting criteria that we can modify. So if we know that affordability is a big concern, we can weigh that higher in your scoring. And we're looking to kind of, set this for particular areas within the city. So just because, priorities in one part of the city might not make sense somewhere else. So we're looking to kind of customize this for each neighborhood or as best as we can over time. And then there needs to just be some, we're working to establish the key thresholds, like so what I was just talking about, what's important to everybody. And then just so you know, this is not a standalone evaluation tool. Still, we'll go through all of the typical traditional evaluation process and fiscal analyses of all applications. It's just something to kind of help us understand right off the bat if this project should be acceptable or not. Okay, and then quickly, we've also heard a lot about locating a school in this area. So we just wanted to talk to you all a little bit about some of the constraints there and then some of the opportunities. So we have been working with the Board of Ed to understand their capacity needs, and other logistics in terms of siting a school and how large of a site they would need. So yeah, likely a developer would need a bonus to likely to be bonus only available to qualifying properties. So similarly to how we have a bonus set up for Holland Gardens and for the light rail, there may have to be another specific bonus for the school. And then as you can see here in this large pink circle, school locations are subject to the Terrell James law. So basically what that means is that a school cannot be located within 1,000 feet of an entry or exit ramp of a major road. So in this case, I-78 and Route 1 and 9. So as you can see, that kind of eliminates a significant portion of the plan area. We do have some availability towards the north and the east of the plan area. It is also possible to get a waiver request for this to the state to kind of advocate for a school closer within that circle. But generally, keeping it outside of that circle will be the easiest route towards citing a school. And then just to kind of walk you through some of the some references of things that have recently happened, recently gone through or been adopted. Locating schools with development. So there's Laurel Saddlewood. It's a full block development. 45,000 square foot school serving 300 to 350 students, pre-K through 5. And then resulting from there, it's quite a substantial number of units, 810 units, 50 stories, 5% of which is affordable. And then another school location, also in tandem with development, is 25 Columbus. So similarly, full block development, 60 stories, 750 units, 5% affordable, and then full build out and delivery of a public school. And that was pursuant to a redeveloper agreement with the the JCRA, and it's under construction. Okay, so I'm going to open up the poll. Mallory, maybe if you just want to talk over the questions while I open up the poll.
Yeah, so we're, like we said, we're still studying kind of the physical constraints of putting a school in this neighborhood, but we're not strangers to the fact that there's been a lot of conversation about the need for a school in this area, and that there's a lot of concerns about, the current conditions of students really having to cross the Holland tunnel lanes in order to get to the current schools that they attend. So the first question we would like to understand from the people here today, do you have school-age children in your household? That's a pretty simple one, but the next question is, would you support a bulk or density bonus option to facilitate the construction of a new public school in the neighborhood? So understanding that there are trade-offs always when we talk about the concept of bonuses and community development. So Liz just kind of went through the two examples of what those trade-offs can be. They're almost always going to be height and density. So are you okay with a larger building coming if that development provides a local school in the neighborhood? And so we can start to understand and just kind of take the temperature of the community and understand if this is the right bonus and how we back into this and really how to incorporate this in the plan moving forward.
Thanks. All right, so I'll leave this open just for a little bit longer. Looks like we have about 60% of the vote in. So yeah, I could just wait a moment, or we could continue and come back to it. What do you think, Mallory?
It's looking on my screen like it's starting to level out a little. I don't see a ton of fluctuation, so we can probably just review it from here.
Okay. All righty. Okay, so, okay, 67% do not have children, school-age children in their household, and 67% would support a bulk or density bonus to facilitate the construction of a new school.
Okay, great. It's great that we have, a pretty clear consensus from the people here tonight and the participation. So that's a good way for us to just take next steps on exploring this option.
Great. Okay. Yep, and I'll pass it your way.
Okay, I'm back here. Once again, sorry, I'm a little bit of an angle on the presentation. I have two devices running right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about 16th Street Park, and we'll get another round of feedback polls at the end of this. I'll preface this with the admission that I'm a bit of a park fanatic. I'm a trained landscape architect, and so parks are always, to me, the most important part of any neighborhood. And so this is an important conversation, I think one that we're trying to take steps to have more preemptively and more in depth in city planning moving forward. So this is a snapshot from some research we recently got from one of our consultants on the master plan, which is currently an ongoing contract we have. So our open space consultant agency, landscape architecture and planning, found these metrics and really did an analysis of the open spaces throughout all of Jersey City, what we have, took an inventory, and then looked at where we stand on each type of amenity within parks on a national level. So basically, how does Jersey City stand up to the national average of these types of facilities? And up top, you'll see the line in green. It really shows the things that we're doing really good at. So this means that we are providing the number of this type of amenity that we need to per the population we have. So again, keep in mind, this is reporting on a citywide scale. This is not an evaluation of this neighborhood specifically, but it's a first step in understanding where are we at today as a city, what are our goals as a city, and from there we can kind of scale ourselves down to a more local level. But we're doing really well with amphitheaters and performance spaces, with providing community gardens, with providing dog parks, and with providing community centers. And then at the bottom, we kind of look at the reverse and where do we fall short of what the national averages are for on a per capita basis. And we're falling short on tennis courts. And so the numbers in these boxes show you how many of each amenity we would have to add to hit the national average. So Jersey City would need to put 9 new tennis courts in throughout the city to be at the national average. Youth baseball, we're short by 10. Trails, in terms of miles, we're short by 3 miles of trails. Multi-use courts, we're short by 4, and basketball courts by 21. I think that kind of surprised a lot of us in planning. We didn't think that basketball would be one we were really short in general, but to be the most short in the suite of programming we looked at by basketball courts was pretty interesting. Okay, and then on top of looking at what our needs are as a city, and as we start to look at what does that mean for the neighborhood, I just want to call attention to some adjacent park projects that are upcoming. So this is a shot of the Cole Street Park, which is going to be coming. I believe they broke ground on the park itself, so it's under construction right now. And you can see this is located, this is going to span over 2 existing blocks right now behind Soho Lofts, or I'm sorry, City Lofts. And you can see on the bottom right there that just shows that this site is located about 810 feet from Holland Gardens. So it's really not far at all. It's less than a quarter mile walk, so less than a 5-minute walk from much of the plan area. So this will be another amenity that will be function as a neighborhood park, though it might, from a zoning standpoint, be in a different redevelopment area. But some of the programming that's going to be coming with this park, so we have a dog park coming and a large playground. There have been some further developments on the design from my understanding, so I believe that there will be an additional swing set area, and the dog park will shift slightly, but that we're not losing any amenities, we're just gaining from what's represented in this rendering. There is a large amphitheater and stage, which would function as more of like a sun deck when there's not an event or performances coming on. And then there's a picnic area. So you can see kind of in the central spine there, there's that gray area. So that's kind of gravel areas that's served by picnic tables and benches. So this gives you a sense of other programming that's going to be there soon that you don't have today. So I would just like you to keep that in mind through the poll questions of what you would like to see in 16th Street Park, which is just 2 blocks away from this park. And now let's get into meeting the needs of the neighborhood. So like I said, we took our first step of what does the city need? We took our next step of like what's coming to your neighborhood. And now if we look at all those things, what do we need here? So just getting to understand this park as it exists. It's a 0.42 acre site, so a little less than half of an acre, or about a little more than 18,000 square feet. And it's a corner lot, which is great on a park, especially a smaller park such as this. It really maximizes light and air and helps the space feel much more open. The current program is 2 volleyball courts and 2 basketball courts. They're quite dilapidated. I don't think anybody who's familiar with the area is naive to that fact, but they are utilized still today. And you can see kind of the outline of the lining on the courts in the aerial here. And the park has 100% impervious coverage, meaning it's all hardscape. There's not landscaping outside of some elevated planters, and that can create a lot of runoff problems in terms of drainage during storm conditions. And then other potential uses. So I just want to kind of circle back to our first meeting and a lot of our Q&A and conversation that we had. And there were a couple of attendees who brought up concerns about air quality in this area, particularly given proximity to the Holland Tunnel lanes. Just to consider that a more of a landscaped condition and the opportunity to plant trees can always help improve those things. Now, this isn't a large area, so we're not going to transform the air quality of the entire neighborhood through this site alone, but these things happen incrementally, step by step. So this could be a piece of that puzzle towards solving issues like that. Also, the ability of pervious coverage, so meaning more landscape or natural condition where water can percolate through the surface and actually soak into the ground. So that can happen in a paver sense too. So don't think that just because it's pervious it has to be green, but obviously the most effective way for water to drain is on natural landscape. And just to call attention to, we also discussed flood concerns in the last meeting, and so the more pervious coverage you have, the more you can help issues such as that. And then passive recreation needs. So noting that just the programming as it exists now are is entirely active recreation, which is great, but we want to know if that's the right thing for this neighborhood, and it very well may be. But we don't want to just move forward assuming that what exists today is exactly what should be there. And then a sense of scale. So sometimes it's hard to understand what can fit in a park, and you look at an aerial and it can very easily look large or smaller than it actually is. So this is a pretty small park, and what kind of programming can really fit in it is driven by its size. So just for reference of other spaces nearby in the city, the Robert Clemente baseball field, you could fit 3 16th Street parks inside of that baseball field. So, baseball might not be a feasible option for a park like this, but, there are other sports that we can accommodate. And then similarly, Hamilton Park can fit 12 16th Street parks. So that's pretty impressive. And that's, shows you that we might not get as wide of a range of programming as is provided in Hamilton Park, but that doesn't mean that we can't recreate some of the amenities that are there today. It's just always a conversation about priorities and trade-offs and concerns, and what combinations of programming are the right, because just because we want 2 different things doesn't mean that they necessarily go well together in a small park. And then on the right, just a sense of so what does fit in this park? And if we take a 50 by 100 foot block, that can fit a lot of smaller scale programming, such as basketball court that can fit a regulation size basketball court and can fit a regulation volleyball or tennis court. It can't fit a soccer court, but it can fit what we would call a soccer pitch. So that's very commonly used in an urban context such as this. And a good example of that is if you're familiar with the Red Bull soccer pitch that is in Hoboken. They have that built under the viaduct at 14th Street in Hoboken. And it's just a way where you're not getting a regulation field, but you're still getting the function of a soccer pitch. And it's still a great asset, for children to come out and play, or adults to come out and play and still have a goal set up. And you can have a little scrimmage and a little match, but you're not going to have a proper regulated youth league playing on this field. And then also just a sense that this 50 by 100 foot block can also accommodate a pretty significant tree canopy. So we can start to look at this. We're not talking about 1 or 2 trees. If we allocate a piece of the park at that size, that we can really start to develop more of a grove condition and build a proper landscaped park, if that's the route that the community would like to go. So comfortably, you can fit about 4 of those 50 by 100 foot blocks in this park. And for reference, just to give you a sense of what does that mean in terms of how it feels to you in the city, the building that's right to the south, Liz, I don't know if you can, it's on the bottom edge here. This building is a very standard, what we would call in city planning is a standard R1 lot, which is a 25 foot wide by 100 lot. So a lot, that's the overwhelming lot type throughout Jersey City. So each one of these is about 2 of those parcels. So you could fit about 8 standard R1 properties within this park, you could assume. So that just gives you a sense of about how big of the space you're getting, and how we can start to push and pull between where we let a lot of light and air in and keep things open, or where we kind of build up the landscape to be more dense, to build privacy, or to try to address some of the other environmental concerns we talked about before. And so now we're going to get to feedback. So now that I've kind of gone through the scale of the park and the types of things we can think about accommodating, and how they relate to other amenities in the area, we're going to open up the poll. So we'd really like to understand what your feedback is directly on what you'd like to see the future of this park be. So I think Liz just opened those up, so they come in, and you can just, the first question is going to be, what kind of programming would you like the redesigned park to include? So there's a couple amenities listed here. You can start to fill those in. And then the second question would be, what balance would you like to see between active and passive recreation? So active being things like sports courts and playgrounds, passive being more open lawn, benches, picnicking, think more low-key, low-energy activities. And then finally, we want to also understand how we prioritize this in the plan, and if the right path forward is for us to consider bonuses in order to incentivize this, both the maximum build out of this park, but also the potential for for property owners to donate some of their property and create new parks in the future. So we'll let that run for a minute or so, and then we can discuss. Okay, so we're at about 2 minutes, so we can let this run till about 3 minutes, Liz, and then we're gonna review, and then we're just gonna open up for general discussion. So I think we've given you kind of like an information overload here so far here tonight. So we want to kind of wrap it up here, get your feedback, and then we'll really be working to kind of button up where a lot of our language is at between now and the next meeting, and then share the form of that plan with you that we plan to and intend to take through to planning board. So there will still be opportunity for comments at the next meeting, but we're going to be really focused on taking you through the actual redevelopment language. And it's going to be less asking for things like this in order to understand how we prioritize the area and the requirements. Okay, all right. It looks like the numbers have started to stop jumping around so much, so we can probably wrap that.
Okay.
Okay, so, see, so this is why these things are interesting. So the most popular response to what kind of programming you'd like to see were passive areas like seating, reading, and talking. So that's a big juxtaposition from the way the site is programmed today. So it's great for us to know that that's what the community would prefer moving forward, is that we incorporate that type of programming as well. It looks like that was followed by natural landscaping, which coincides a lot with passive recreation, and followed then by event space. So that's also great feedback for us to know that that might be a needed amenity in the neighborhood. Okay, question 2. What balance would you like to see between active and passive recreation in this park? And most people wanted 50-50, which is great. That's ideal and much easier for us to move forward with than if there's a little bit more of opposing views on how to program the site. And then would you support a bulk or density bonus to facilitate construction of a redesigned park? 62% of you said yes. And then worth noting probably is that the responses for no and indifferent were pretty close to one another. And finally, would you support that same kind of bonus structure to facilitate dedication of private land for a new park? 69% of you said yes, and about the same number of you said indifferent. So this is great feedback for us to move forward with and understand how we address the open space, the current open space bonus, and how we want to tweak that and maximize that moving forward to really deliver these kinds of parks to the neighborhood. Okay, great. So to wrap it up, we're gonna just open up for general Q&A. Matt, can you remind me here, did we just have everybody raise their hands at the first meeting? So if you'd like to ask a question, or if you just have something you want to voice in terms of a priority or a concern moving forward, you can use the raise your hand function. If you're calling in, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And we can just kind of open it up for general conversation, and we'll also try to address if there were overwhelming reoccurring themes in the Q&A function. We can talk about those as well. Okay. Liz, I don't know if you're able to promote speakers.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got Kern and then Dawn.
Okay. And if you could just let us know your name, introduce yourself when you come on, and where you live, that'd be great.
Okay, this is Karen. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay, great. It's Karen Weisman. I live in the Heights. So the two things, thank you for the presentation. A lot of good information here. So the thing that I didn't see, and I know I mentioned this last time, so sorry to be like a broken record here, but I am very concerned about and I guess you could kind of slot it into the traffic concern. But I'm very concerned about getting in and out of this area when all this development happens. Your bulk map showed a pretty good vision of, or a pretty good reality of what's going on and what's been built, what is been approved to be built, and what is, and then you add in everything here with some of these density and bulk bonuses, you're going to have a pretty congested area. And I'm really concerned that I'm not seeing anything about the connectivity, not just to the Heights, but also to other areas, and non-vehicular connectivity, so pedestrian and bike. And I know there's been some discussions around that, and there's been discussions in the bike master plan, or some ideas presented in the bike master plan with how to get, utilizing different, creating different dedicated paths that would connect this area to both the Heights, to Hoboken, and also to Hamilton Park in downtown Jersey City. So I'm very interested to know, when do you think, or do you think that this discussion and idea around connectivity and non-vehicular connectivity will happen? That was my first question. So is that something that is being considered as part of this?
There is a level of it that's being considered. I'll preface that with we are still working in conversation with the engineering division. So we're still working with them on getting some questions answered about long-term visions for the area, a lot of understanding of what the bike mobility network is going to look like in this neighborhood. So we will be able to talk about some of that more in depth at the next meeting. And then just kind of where we are, of course, conscious and prioritizing these things and understanding where it's appropriate to fit those things into the plan, but also understand that like one specific redevelopment plan isn't often the most effective mechanism to address some of these concerns, especially when we talk about like inter-neighborhood connectivity. There's things we can do to incentivize good design and good connections, and we're certainly looking at how to emphasize those things in the plan and where regulations can come into play to ensure those things. But it's also then about, a lot of that's about like just understanding these concerns. It's still a valuable conversation for us to have at a meeting such as this, so that we can take it back to a lot of the other work we do. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we can facilitate all of those things, through the zoning we put in place in this particular redevelopment area, but we can certainly address what we can address. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more next time. Like we said, we're still waiting on some coordination with engineering to get clearer answers. And we'll talk about like what we think the final iteration of those solutions, or what solutions we'll be able to accomplish in the plan at the next meeting.
So some of those things that are being discussed are sidewalk widths, which we have some control over in zoning. So we're going to be looking to control that by as measured from the curb line. So right now we're thinking like 15-foot sidewalks for some of these larger, next to these larger buildings. So it gives a good amount of pedestrian space. Also potentially changing the curb line slightly to accommodate or better buffer bike lanes on some key streets like Marin general, where the southbound lane doesn't have a parking lane, even right up against the sidewalk. So we're addressing some of the issues, and we're reaching out to Andrew Vicio and Park and Patel, who are doing great strides throughout the city to do increase mobility. So it's not necessarily solved in zoning, but some of it is. So we're trying to focus our efforts, and we definitely are aware of them.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I have had some discussions. We even did a walkthrough of the area at one point with Barca. So she's aware of some of the challenges. And there is also, just going to also remind that there's a significant area of in this connectivity, potential connectivity spaces that are owned by New Jersey Transit that potentially could be leveraged. So there's some private property and some county property and some New Jersey Transit property that could help facilitate better connectivity even to existing bike paths and existing pedestrian walkways and things like that. So I definitely think it's a great that you're looping in Barca to this as well, and engineering to make sure if we do have an opportunity to get things connected, that we do it right. I know there were some potentially missed opportunities on some of the projects on New York Ave, which would involve New Jersey Transit property and private property. So I appreciate that. And then my last comment is just I want to be a little bit careful about just from a heights perspective, just about the height, only because we're always kind of at risk of kind of like from a light and air perspective and kind of walling off the heights, if you will. So I believe the cliff height, and thank you, Matt, you answered the question about the Peapod. This is outside of the Peapod area, but we know like the Marshall, in Hoboken at Marshall Street, which this is close to, we did a lot of work for the 2 Hoboken Ave to keep that at 13 stories. I think it was 12 or 13, I believe, but to try to minimize the impacts in terms of just kind of creating like this walled off effect in the height. So once you get above that, that cliff, I think it's about 120 feet at that, in this area. Once you get up to the 140, 160 feet ranges, you do start to create this effect of kind of just, walling us off a bit. So I think in just long term, we just, may want to be really, really consider the sight lines and kind of how this was going to be affecting adjacent neighborhoods. So I appreciate those type of studies as well. So looking at things from how is this going to look from the adjacent neighborhood perspectives in terms of the bulk and height. So thank you.
All right.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Should we?
Yeah, I'll move on to Dawn.
Dawn?
Yep.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Dawn. If you happen to have 2 devices on in your house, you just need to mute whichever one you're not talking to eliminate the feedback.
Yep, got it. So I wanted to make a very quick comment. I was not able to view the slides earlier. I was on a different device and I couldn't see the slides, but I wanted to make comments specifically about the park, about the 16th Street Park. I just wanted to make it very clear that my stance is that we need to remediate or in effect install green infrastructure in this park that will remediate for having so much impermeable space. So if we indeed do end up with active recreation there, the trees and any other gardens and things won't just be for show. They need to be something that's going to do some work for us to mitigate the runoff. And it shouldn't just be, quote unquote, a rain garden either. There's a terrific opportunity for wildlife habitat, even in a very small garden. And I think that it's of paramount importance that we look at these things as a necessity and not as something pretty to look at. The trees should be in tree pits that are going to soak up a ton of runoff and stormwater. Any gardens should be working gardens. They should be rain gardens that take in water even from the sidewalks or the curbs. And they should use 100% native plantings that are native to Northern New Jersey, not just something that's native to North America. And further, they should be organized in a way there's winter interest and habitat that's provided for local birds, because the National Wildlife Foundation put out 3 articles just this year talking about the fact that these small urban gardens create respite spaces for migrating birds, and it's really important. This tiny little park can make a really big difference if it's a daisy chain of small gardens that leads to a larger park. So that's my 50 cents.
Thank you.
And
That's really great
sure,
feedback.
absolutely.
Thank you. And
Yeah,
I
I'm
would agree that a performative landscape is always, you know, the preferable way that we can start to program out natural area.
I am Jersey City's only green infrastructure champion right now through Rutgers. So anything I can do to provide information, connections, growers, all of it, I would love to help out. I'd love to volunteer
Great,
and also
We'll
to
keep
get
you
connected
in
to the
mind.
community. Okay, thank you so much.
great. Thanks,
Thank
Dawn.
Take care.
Okay, next up is Diane.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, great. This is my first Zoom planning meeting.
Well, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'll introduce myself. I'm Diane Francis, and my husband and I are the owners of the Exxon gas station on the outbound of the Holland Tunnel. We have been neighbors in this neighborhood for over 40 years. Previously, my father-in-law, and we just, we've seen so much change in this area, and I just want to thank the planning board for opening up these kind of meetings, because like I said, in all these years, I've never been on a meeting, and I love that you're involving the neighborhood and the community of the area, which these results are going to really affect. And so I appreciate that. And it feels like our voices are being heard, and that we're really being involved in this future planning of Jersey City, which over the many years, I've seen such a huge change. Regarding the proposal of the amendment to the plan in this area that I've been seeing on Jersey Digs, if you go back to that slide that you showed with the big circle on, my business is in the in that little commercial strip area. Yes, thank you. Thank you. You guys are so good at this. This is amazing. So when you see that square box, that's my property there. And I'm disappointed that I am deemed in this commercial strip, because what I see for future for that property would be a mixed use of say commercial and also residential, with bottom floors being commercial, adding elements to the community that would be like really important, like stores, having this whole little area self-sustained in like the new master plan to have like a little neighborhood in that area. And I feel like I'm just being left out right there. So I just wanted to put that into thought of possible mixed use there, not just being commercial, because as I am today, a gas station, who knows in the future of where gas stations are going to be standing, with clean energy and everything going forward, which is not a bad idea. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I really appreciate this opportunity to see all these great things happening in the neighborhood. And I would love for my piece to be a part of that, and to have cafes and parks and in this little area. So that is just my little 2 cents of saying hello. And it's all very interesting and really great and exciting of seeing, where, I've seen this area for most of my life, and a lot of changes, and they're all great and exciting.
Great, thank you, Diane. And we'll definitely, keep your feedback in mind as we're pushing through a lot of the zoning moving forward.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I guess I could lower my hand. How does this work?
Yeah,
We'll do it for you.
Yeah, we can do it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions? I know I've seen some things in the chat. Maybe we can, the chat Q&A, maybe we could do some of those, but I don't see any more hands. So if you would like to say something, feel free to raise your hand. And Yeah, I guess, Matt, are you noticing any, I know you addressed some of the stuff in the chat with, like I see somebody had a question about sidewalks and trees, so you did talk about some of that. We had, oh, there's some questions about transportation. Matt, I don't know if you want to kind of, was there anything in the chat that you wanted to
Yeah,
kind
can
of talk
you,
about?
I'm trying to get a link right now. Can you read the question and then maybe we can just bring that conversation to live discussion?
What?
Can
Do
you
you
just
have a
read the
specific
can you read the
comment?
question? I don't have it up.
Oh, no, no, I was just asking, was there anything from the Q&A that you wanted to discuss?
I can see. So,
I
So I'm
am
gonna
like all
guess
over the
no.
place trying to answer questions. I don't have anything off the top of my head.
Okay.
he's supposed
No,
to be
that's fine.
Oz behind the curtain. He can't be.
Yeah, I do see, you know, I do see a lot of people echoing the traffic and connectivity concerns.
Right, so
And
I can address those just to some extent. So the strategy that we're taking in large part is to, it's aligned with our circulation master plan, which was adopted earlier in like 2012 or 2013. Some of the recommendations come out of there were asking city planning with decreasing auto dependence. So for a lot of the zoning proposals that we spoke about, we were actually just introducing maximum parking ratios and having no minimums. We are putting a minimum requirement on the Holland Garden site. That was an outcome and reflection of some of the comments we received from some of the public housing folks that were in attendance at the last public meeting. But by and large, we're looking to drive down the creation of off-street parking, and we'll believe that will have a large impact on the amount of car ownership in the area, thereby also driving down traffic generated by this area. So it's not necessarily an improvement, but it's trying to mitigate it as much as possible. In addition to that, and some of the stuff we are talking about with regards to Ern's comments earlier tonight, we're also looking at curb management and loading areas. We all know that deliveries and loading and drop off are a newer phenomenon that we are having to deal with on a regular basis. So we're looking at possibly requiring slip lanes in some areas, or little or indents to the curb, but not decreasing the sidewalk width. So it might have to accommodate that. In addition to, we're studying that further right now. So that would be effect to drive down any delay for loading to slow down the flow of traffic. But also we have to keep in mind how that relates to the bike infrastructure that we're also trying to bring into this area as well, or expand within this area, because we already have a good deal of protected bike lanes there on 18th Street. So I'm not sure if I exhausted that question, but or answered everyone's questions, but what we're trying to do is to look at these Q&As that are still open and trying to answer them, and we're going to be posting answers to unanswered questions on the data portal, the area where we're keeping all this information in one place, meeting links, registration links, one place, anything we're pushing out, one place. What we're trying to do by this Friday, and I'm not sure if we discussed it yet, as I said, I've been kind of all over the place. We're trying to push out a working draft of the language that we discussed here in the presentation. We'll also be posting the presentation on that same data portal.
okay, yeah, I see a
Great.
couple more hands.
Yeah, I just wanted to address real quick, looking at the Q&A. There's some questions, additional questions about like traffic assessments and shuttle services to light rail stations and such. So every time somebody does come in for a site plan on these sites, if they meet the major site plan threshold, they are required to provide a traffic study for each individual project. We have also written in that with the extension of 15th Street in the Holland Gardens proposal, that a traffic study will need to be done for that site plan as well, to understand if we need to start looking at adding traffic signals in the neighborhood or other traffic control mechanisms. And also on the idea of the shuttle services. So these have been kind of a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways. I think the idea of these larger scale developments providing shuttle services, it's most certainly an efficient way to get tenants of a building to a light rail, and before, or in the meantime, before we have a light rail station local to this neighborhood, that could be an effective way to encourage the use of mass transportation. I know Liz and I had actually just discussed in the last day or two whether we should explore looking at property ownership in a way where we might require joined shuttle services, so that we don't start to get into a situation where we now have a private shuttle coming from every individual building, and that can still lead to the buildup of traffic issues a lot. And also there's a lot of kind of loading concerns with those shuttles queuing up on the streets in the neighborhood, taking up parking, things like that. So we'll look into if there's a way for this plan to address shuttles more efficiently, and long term, should a light rail, either not come to fruition or take a little longer than we would hope to come to fruition, to make sure that we don't just kind of ignore the other side of the reality of how things are functioning today. So we'll be looking at that in the next few weeks as well.
Great. Okay, Amy, I will allow you to talk. You should be able to talk now.
Thank you, Liz.
Hi.
Haney Ahmed, a property owner in the area. Again, I want to thank planning for taking the time and really making this an interactive process. It's very inclusive, it's very clear, and it's obvious that you guys are putting a lot of thought into this. And just want to say I appreciate that to begin with. I have two questions. One, not so much. Maybe I'll start with one. I mentioned in the last time that you had the comment section that there's a clear disconnect that is no fault of Jersey City. It's just more of a fact of that the Holland Tunnel is, where it is in Jersey City, and it causes a separation between neighborhoods. It's a tall order, I get it, but if it's not asked, then maybe it'll never be looked at. But is there any way to approach the Port Authority and ask for even, a median, even if it's a 5-foot median that goes through the center line where it could be plantings, kind of like what they did on the West Side Highway, but maybe not as wide. And it does two things. It does some traffic calming, and it also assists with pedestrians trying to cross from or navigate from one neighborhood to another. It gives you an island of a safe haven if you can't make it all the way across. I know it's frowned upon to have walkover crossovers that you see in parts of New York from the 60s and 70s. They didn't do so well. They became a little bit dangerous and derelict. But if there's anything to calm it down from a 8 or 9 lane approach to 4 lane with a stopover, another 4 lane, again, if you don't ask, you don't get. Mm-hmm. It is a tall order. And the second question that I had was with regard to some of your, maybe lower or mixed use buildings, in terms of lower floors, would it be possible to also include in some 12 to 14 foot ceiling heights for possible work live? We're seeing a lot of people that now are the new gig economy. They're working from home, and whether they're photographers or they're making something, or I think that we, for this area, we do have Lackawanna, which is an older warehouse style building, but we're seeing a demand for newer space that's either more efficient, energy savings that comes from the new buildings, and we're seeing a demand for that. And it also helps create activity during the day, so that you just don't have a bedroom community, that there's always activity going on, eyes on the street, and placemaking. So I leave you with those two questions, and I understand the first one's a very tall order.
My internet slowed down for the second question, so I'm just going to answer the first.
Perfect.
So I mean, the Port Authority just recently went to cashless tolling. There may be opportunity there to have a discussion with them, at least on the 12th Street side. You know, I'm not sure if it's part of this effort. I'm not sure we'll be able to, well, I'm almost certain I can say in 3 weeks' time, we will not have an answer for you from the Port Authority on that question or this topic. But I think we all recognize at City Planning that issue and know it is an issue and recognize it as something that in the long-term future of Jersey City that needs to be remedied, should not be in the current form that it is in, and is crucial to long-term livability of this area that we're talking about tonight.
And then regarding the floor to ceiling heights or floor to floor heights, right now we're considering setting bulk, we're considering setting a number of stories and feet requirements. So for example, I just pulled up this slide. So as an example, if a smaller lot is taking advantage of this affordable housing bonus, they would be permitted a maximum of 12 stories and 140 feet. So just the way I typically think about it, and you know, your floor to floors could be a little different, but so we typically assume about 10 feet for residential floor to floor. So you know, there'd be some flexibility there. So you're kind of got 20 feet to play with in terms of, you know, having some taller floor to floors in areas that make sense within your project.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes with, like I said, our philosophy as we've approached a lot of our most recent kind of large redevelopment plan amendments or overhauls, if you will, are really to kind of allow a lot of these things to be flexible to the developer, in the sense that we don't need to like create a very, very, very specific vision for each property of exactly how each building should function or look. And so that a lot of our regulations are stepping back and just understanding what are the things that truly impact the community and how do we start to regulate those things in an appropriate way. And so that frees us up a lot more on a lot of our traditional zoning that gets very specific with floor to ceiling heights by use, floor to ceiling heights by, you know, location on the block, things of that nature. So a lot of those things won't be carried forward in this plan, and a lot of the bulk and design regulations will be much more flexible than we've had in the past. Okay, I see 2 more hands. So I think we're at 8 o'clock now, so I want to be sensitive to people's time so we can get through those 2, and then we'll, I think, wrap up the discussion portion.
Okay, so Frederick.
Hey there.
Hi.
Hey, my name is Frederick Cook. I'm an architect. I'm actually over in Journal Square. My question is more about the buildings themselves. One of the things as an architect I hear from my clients almost entirely is that they want 1 and 2 bedroom units only and are not interested in larger unit sizes. I have a concern when you're sort of developing a neighborhood that this encourages a high level of transition, and rather than people settling in and raising families. So I wonder about discussions like, why are you building a school if you're not going to require family-sized units? Is there anything within the zoning strategy where you can encourage people to make units that are more targeted to family sizes that are more traditional with 2 and 3 kids, as opposed to these tiny 1 and 2 bedroom units?
So I'll answer that question, and it's a very good one. So in other areas of Jersey City, the zoning does have some requirements for 3 bedroom units, like Journal Square has a requirement.
Right.
In Canal Crossing, there is a requirement. In some other areas, there's requirements that I'm maybe less familiar with off the top of my head. But in this plan, and the current thinking right now is that we are not having requirements on the market rate units with regards to unit mix. And we are requiring through the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls, the UHAC, which we discussed briefly in the first meeting. There is unit mix requirements there, and they do require a range of unit mixes, so including 3-bedroom units, including 2-bedroom units, from some family size units. I'll just be outwardly frank about this. The goal there is if more market units there are, the more affordable units there are. So if there are small market rate units, there are more affordable units. So that's the strategy we're taking at this moment. But we are open to the conversation. Should more people voice that the market rate units should also have some form of unit mix requirements, we can take those into consideration.
Yeah, just from my point of view, like if you're trying to create a community, having people that only stay 3 or 4, 7, 6 years, and then have to pack up and move their families to the Heights or to Maplewood, you're not really sort of effectively building a strong neighborhood. You know, sort of having intergenerational sort of families there would be much more effective.
There are right now the market is producing. Yeah, I mean, where there isn't these in Jersey Avenue Park, there are some buildings with larger units, 3-bedroom units, 4-bedroom units, and their market rate units. Some of those units aren't priced at a price point that families really desire.
Right.
So they're mostly some of them are designed as master suites with ensuite bathrooms, 3-bedroom units with ensuite bathrooms.
Right.
So we think that the strategy that we're taking is a good one to create those affordable units that are family based. But we are open to the conversation.
Thank you. All right, Chris.
Hi. So I just wanted to follow up on a commenter who was on a few minutes ago talking about 12th and 14th Streets from a pedestrian safety standpoint. I also, wanted to bring up some other issues with regard to the condition of the sidewalks along those streets, and even the design of the poles that carry the traffic lights and the street signs are designed to take up the entire width of the sidewalk. So, that's not at all ADA compliant. It's not human walking compliant, or human walking with a shopping cart back from Target compliant either. So, I think there's a number of kind of pedestrian access, pedestrian safety issues that could be addressed there. Also the signals with the beg buttons. I mean, we just saw a huge snowfall that stuck around for a while. Those beg buttons are inaccessible. You can't get to them. They're under snow. And therefore you do not get a pedestrian signal to cross this really wide highway. And that's a problem on several corridors in Jersey City, but in this study area along 12th and 14th Streets as well.
Yeah, that's great feedback, Chris. Thank you. Those are really good considerations for us to take, in coordination with Port Authority moving forward.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think out of this effort, we're getting a Rolodex of people that are very interested in traffic concerns related to Holland Tunnel, and perhaps we can convince Port Authority to have a community meeting and organize the folks that have registered for these community meetings. I think that would be a really fruitful thing for us to try to initiate. We do have people from the Port Authority and PATH reaching out to us, and we have meetings with them, and they're always concerned about intensification around some of the PATH stations, but we think we might have an avenue for discussing some of these concerns here.
Great. All right, and I see one last hand, so I think we'll take this last commenter, and then we'll wrap it up for the night.
Yeah. Okay, Hiso, you're on.
Hi, this is my first time, so I'm asking for a little bit of education here. So I'm a owner. I live across from where the new light station is being proposed.
Mhm.
And I saw someone commenting and asking a question about like the difference between the proposed, I guess, and approved. So it sounds like, is it saying that that area has been proposed for a light rail, but that's separate from construction of one which has yet to be approved? And my understanding is it's been approved to have a station there, but I guess it's been many years. So kind of like what really keeps and could potentially continue to stall a station coming in? Because my family would love it if there was something there for sure.
Right.
Yeah, so the development itself, so in this diagram, everything that's yellow is proposed. So the actual development has not been approved. The NJ Transit has, you can kind of see there's a lot of curves of the track geometry here. So right now, this is the part of the track, well, not right now, forever. This is the part of the track that's straightened out. So this is really the place where NJ Transit has planned for the potential for a station to be. So the track kind of straightens out here. It's the logical place for a station. However, further conversations and, kind of checking in with between NJ Transit and the development team, and kind of just, confirming the viability of this station moving forward.
Yeah, so just to elaborate a little bit, the way that we're writing the zoning in place now is that the developer of that site would not be able to get an approval for this bonus bulk and bonus proposal without furnishing proof to us that NJ Transit has signed off on the light rail station. So what that means is that they'll have to, coordinate with them in advance of submitting their application and getting to planning board. We'll have to have a signed affidavit from NJ Transit that, this coordination has occurred and that NJ Transit is on board and that NJ Transit finds the proposal feasible. And then in addition to that, should all of that work out and the developer get an approval and move forward with construction, we're requiring that the station be built out as the first phase of any multi-phase of construction. So if they need to construct the property over 2 or 3 phases, the light rail station has to be done under the first phase, and they have to furnish a fully functioning and operable light rail station in order to get their certificate of occupancy, which means in order to move tenants in to their building and actually have their building function, they have to deliver the light rail station. So we kind of have some checks in place along the way to make sure that, we're actually getting the benefit. And at a very high level, like Liz said, we do know that NJ Transit has looked at this run for feasibility of a station in the past. They haven't moved those plans forward concretely or fast enough for our, preference. And so this is a great way to kind of help accelerate that conversation and help accelerate implementation, is to leverage the private sector to really introduce these kinds of things. But it's something, we're aware that we need to make sure that if we're writing the bonus in place for the station is 100% delivered and guaranteed for that development to happen.
Taking one step back too, so to answer your question about the difference between proposed and approved and under construction, so proposed means that this effort right now, we're seeking your input, and yours being the public input, considerations, recommendations, formally new zoning for this area. So to do that, to enable that zoning for applications or applicants, developers to utilize new zoning, it needs to go through planning board and city council, and by ordinance receiving an affirmative vote would become new law. which these applicants would be able to apply under. So that is a ways off. We're having another meeting in March, and then after that it would be planning board and council meetings. In addition, there's a lot of community benefits, and I want to reiterate, or if it wasn't, or say it if it wasn't said, that the IZO, the Inclusionary Zoning Ordinance, really pushes affordable housing to the forefront of the community benefits that should come out of any rezoning. So we've been meeting with Councilman James Solomon to discuss the light rail site and the draft fiscal analysis that we've done. And if there's considerations for park or new school or other ones, we will have to be having more of those conversations and be really looking to Councilman Solomon to lead the way on whether or not those items should be really at the forefront of some of the other goals for this area. Otherwise, we'll default to affordable housing, which is not a bad thing. That is the priority that we've seen in some of the polls that we've put out, and that is the way we're drafting the bonuses beyond the light rail station site.
Gotcha.
All right.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, again, I'm kind of learning here. In the perfect world where everything is approved and we're fine and dandy, realistically, how quickly do these things get built?
Construction of something like this would definitely be a multi-year effort. So this is not, I would say if we're talking about like short term being the next year or two, near term being the next 5 to 10 years, I would say we're more towards the near term side of things. So, by the time we're really working right now on the very first step of this process, like Matt said, to get the zoning in place, then there's the entire process begins for the developer to be able to come in with a proposal to planning board and get their approvals. And then, if should that work out, then they move forward with being able to actually construct the project. And that's, constructing, engineering, designing, and building a light rail station is not a short task.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so I think we'll just, I have up our closing slide, and I see Diane had raised her hand again. Diane, feel free to shoot us an email and we will get back to you if you'd like to talk some more. Okay, so this was meeting 2. Our public comment period will be by email through the 22nd. We'll email you probably Friday this week once we posted all this information to the data portal. So just keep an eye out for an email. And yeah, we're looking to have our next meeting on Tuesday, March 16th. I think we had put a different date out there last time, but we just wanted to make sure we weren't conflicting with a council meeting. So yeah, Tuesday, March 16th. And yeah, we'll kind of just, next meeting's goal is to kind of review the draft language. And I think it sounded like we were hopefully going to try to get back on some of the, get some more feedback on some of the traffic and engineering related questions. And our emails are below, so feel free to reach out. We've had some conversations with some of you offline and are open to discussion. Mallory, anything else?
No, just thanks for joining. Don't forget to register for the next meeting. And like we said, you guys were our best asset in creating awareness for the meeting. So continue to talk to your neighbors and your friends and share, what we've discussed in resources and how they can join in on the 3rd round.
Yeah.
So with that, thanks all for sticking in a couple extra minutes. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your participation, and we'll see you all in about a month.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye all.
Bye.
Liz, just remember to save the Q&A.
Yep, will do.